This is the Build Zone podcast. Welcome to episode 128 of the Build Zone podcast. My name is Allison Jackson, joined by Mike Maloney over there, where we have a presenting partner, the Rowley Agency, this week, as well as our lightning round sponsor, E. Amanti and Sons. Mike, tell us about our partners.
We're excited to have Rowley Agency on with us one more week here on the podcast. Rowley Agency is a Gallagher company, and they are an insurance agency. I'm going to edit this part out because the LinkedIn page doesn't work. What does that mean? This page is no longer active. Sorry about that. Let's do that again. Let me just find the right page here. Why doesn't that work?
That's all right.
Why doesn't that work? Insurance. That was it's not working. Sorry about that. Let's just start throwing it all out. Sorry. Start over again. Sorry.
Whole thing?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to episode 128 of the Build Zone podcast. My name is Allison Jackson, joined by Mike Maloney. This week, our presenting partner is the Rowley Agency, and our lightning round sponsor is E. Amanti and Sons. Mike, tell us about our supporters this month.
I'd like to thank Eric Horner and the folks at the Rowley Agency, which is now a Gallagher Insurance Company. They offer business insurance, surety bonds, personal insurance, employee benefits. And if you're not following Eric Horner on LinkedIn, he does an amazing job. He posts every day. He's the area vice president of the Rowley Agency. He's the chairman of the ABC New Hampshire Vermont ABC chapter. He's chairman of the board. We appreciate him very much. If you don't follow Eric on LinkedIn, he posts every day. He posts some great content. His name is Eric Horner. Eric, Horner, Eric Horner. Check him out on LinkedIn. And the folks over at Iamonte, we appreciate them very much. They helped us out at the student graduation, which was this past week. They are located here in Massachusetts. They're a family-owned business, and we thank them for all their support. They've been ABC members for a long time, and their undying and unwavering support of the Gould Construction Student is much appreciated. This week on our Best Thing I Saw, we're going to talk a little bit about student graduation. Diane Craven did an amazing job on student graduation. We had quite a few students there. We had quite a few teachers there, so thanks to the teachers for coming out. We appreciate them very much. Without the students and the teachers, we wouldn't have much of a school. So that was awesome. You were there, Allison. What was your takeaway?
I thought it was a blast. I mean, we had a great time. A bunch of people came. The food was great. We gave away so many swag bags. And we have some left over, so maybe we can give a few away on the pod. I don't know. We'll figure that out. Maybe give them away on social or something like that.
And Allison also did a great job. All the swag stuff and all the advertising, all the marketing was fantastic. It was great. People did have a good time. I'm sure that we'll do it again here in the office parking lot here. It was just a great time. It was nice to see we get blessed with some great weather. We gave away some really cool swag to Milwaukee, thanks to all them. And thanks to Kayla for bringing the photo booth. The 360 photo booth was a hit. Pizza was great. Barbecue was great.
So good.
It was just nice to be outside and see people that you haven't seen in a while, with so many students, 1,000 students and 11 locations kind of spread out. But it was great to see everybody in person and word. So and then sticking with our theme here, we're going to give them a follow. If you're not following Elsie Anderson on social media, you need to follow Elsie Anderson. They are the crew over there, the Hudson boys, are again profound supporters of ABC Massachusetts and the school. I'm just going to bring up their social media real quick. They are on the Instagram as Elsie Anderson HVACR, and the reason we want to give them a follow is because Kurt Hudson over there is going to did a ride on June 1st. It's called the 2024 Ride to End Alzheimer's. He rode 100 miles on a bicycle, and he raised over $13,000 to help end Alzheimer's. So congratulations to Kurt and his team over there. Kurt's Cutters. It was great. If you look for them on social media, you'll see it. I've done long distance bike rides, and that ride that he did 100 miles is a killer in New Hampshire. It is a crazy hilly ride. I hope he survived. I'll have to check in with him, but we want to give them a shout, want to give them a follow, and we want to say that Kurt Hudson is crushing it. Raised over 13,000, rode a bike 100 miles. If you've never ridden a bike that far, it is incredibly difficult. It is hard on the body. I used to do a lot of bike riding stuff years ago, and I miss it a lot. So congrats
Yeah,
to Kurt Hudson.
that is
Uh,
very impressive.
yeah, it's. I've done a few bike rides from Boston to Providence. It's a long ride. It's a long. It is
I
a.
don't think I'd want to ride a bike from like here to Dunkin' Donuts down the street.
Oh,
I wouldn't go to Dunkin' Donuts regardless, but you know what I mean. I don't know. That's just so much commitment and work. I could do it if I really had to, but to do it for such a good cause and to also in tandem be raising that much money for the cause, it's like
yeah,
that's really impressive.
when you're there, when we used to do the ride from Boston to Provincetown was the ride, the MS getaway, Cape Cod getaway. And it was, you see a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people on bikes who would leave Boston, ride all the way down, and you'd stop at Hyannis halfway point, spend the night. It was just a big party at halfway point, and you ride. And I can't believe that the Cape is pretty hilly. I thought it was gonna be a flat, kind of a beach type of thing, but it was lots of hills. You get to Provincetown, you get on a boat, take the shuttle back. It was, I used to love it. I used to love riding with my buddies. And
That actually reminds me really quickly. The have you seen on like Instagram, TikTok, there's this oh, what is it? It's the bike bus. Have you seen this before?
no,
This guy, he's on his bike and he supervises like it's got to be 100 kids and gets them to school and they so he drives right on his bike and he drives through the street like and all the kids were waiting on the sidewalk in front of their houses with their parents and he starts blasting Crazy Train on this huge speaker on his bike and all the kids are behind him and in front of him and he's just like making sure they're safe, getting them to school. Oh my God, it's awesome. I'll send you a link after this. If
where
you
is he? Is he local here?
No, definitely not. I
Oh,
think it's like I'll try to find it, but oh my God, it's so good. It's like the kids all get so excited. They're all pumped up to go to school. And then it's like a safe and healthy way for these
yep.
kids to get to school and their parents don't have to worry. They're supervised and he watches them all go right into the schoolyard. And I don't know how the school has that many bike racks, but the
Yeah,
bike
a friend of
bus.
friend
Yep.
of mine, a friend of mine was big into bike riding, long distance bike ride stuff a few years ago and got me into it. He started doing charity bike rides. His wife at the time had MS. Has MS, was doing charity bike rides to help with the MS stuff. And then he got a bunch of us into riding, right? We used to all go riding. It was, we used to ride as little kids together, and then we haven't ridden in a long time. And they start riding bikes together again. So we'd be out there. I used to ride, 100 miles a week, maybe after work every day, go and ride from my house in Beverly to Gloucester, Mass, which is 27 miles round trip almost. So you go up there and back. It was incredibly in love with just riding bikes, but it was cool because we rode together. And then when all my friends started getting married and moving away, it was like no one to ride with anymore. So I was like hung the bike up and haven't ridden it since. So
Yeah.
it's a shame I miss out. I gotta start riding the bike bus. Man,
To join the bike bus. Hold on, let me
man.
see if you can you hear this?
How many kids do you think ride in the bike bus?
Look. Oh, this is
What?
a small amount today, but they like you see it's like not even halfway through.
Start picking the kids up. I love it.
They're
I think it's
so
amazing.
excited.
I love it.
The guy's like, come on, let's go to school, bike bus. And all the kids are like,
I
yeah.
love it. We used to, my guys, we used to do long, just getting a crew. When you're riding with like 100 people, you got 30 people on a line, you're all back to back, wheel to wheel, and you're just cruising.
And it's adrenaline too, right? Like,
Yeah. Some of the guys I ride with would go Boston to P Town and like Boston to Hyannis in like 3.5 hours, which is hauling. It's 75 miles.
meanwhile, I have an uncle that won't even drive he takes a plane to
Yeah.
Cape Cod whenever he goes. There's two types of people.
Now, when I was riding bikes a few years ago, I didn't, I couldn't afford the very expensive bike. So I bought like a used bike, a couple $100 got me through. And my buddies were all buying super high end carbon fiber aluminum jobs. And I kind of made it my own personal goal to whoop them because I'm gonna outride you on my crappy steel bike, and you got this crazy carbon fiber bike. So that's kind of the joke between my friends and I was whooping them on this 1980 Bianchi steel bike, and they had these crazy fancy carbon fiber, could like lift with a pinky. It took like 2 hands to lift my steel bike up, but I was carrying a lot more weight on the bike back then.
Yeah.
All right, this week on the podcast we have a repeat guest. Her name is Lisa Nakamura. She was on a few weeks ago talking about leadership. This time she talks about company culture. It was great. She talks about the iceberg of ignorance, which is pretty awesome when you think about company culture. Who's responsible for the culture? How to make a tremendous culture, things like that. So let's listen to what Lisa has to say. Welcome back to the podcast, Lisa Nakamura. This is kind of unusual because Lisa was on a few weeks ago, and there hasn't been very many people that have been on 2 times, and this is something pretty unusual where she's actually agreed to come back on again after being on a few weeks ago. So Lisa, welcome back.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's good to be back, and thanks for asking me. I'm not sure, do you normally with the lightning round like scare people away so they're not going to come back, or?
We've heard that before. We get that sometimes from people that say, lightning round was a bit tougher, but yours was spot on. Yours was great. It was, it's we said this before. We ask the hard hitting questions on the podcast, but the reason that you're back today, and let you introduce yourself, is we want to talk a little bit about company culture. So for those that don't know who you are, if you could just remind them and introduce yourself, and we'll talk about culture.
Sure. So again, if you didn't dial into the last one, and you should, because all of these are great.
Yep.
My name's Lisa Nakamura. I'm the owner of Nakamura Consulting, LLC, located just outside of Portland, Maine. I recently relocated back to New England. Prior to this, I did 20 years as a leadership consultant with a background in safety, health, and environment, as well as HR. I also was the vice president of human resources for PJ Dick, Trumbull, and the Lindy Group, headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. $1.5 billion top ranked in our GC in the Mid-Atlantic region, with vertical, heavy civil, as well as integrated concrete and asphalt, as well as trucking. So very, very happy to be here with you again, Mike, to talk about culture.
Mm.
Yeah.
And last time here, we talked about some leadership things, and I think that it kind of ties into the culture piece. And we'll let you kind of do your thing, but what are some ways that companies can, improve the culture? What makes a good culture of company?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. So one of the roles I have with my construction as well as my manufacturing clients, and that I've had through my career, has been to go in and actually do a culture assessment. So, a lot of companies that hire me, they want to understand what it feels like to be actually doing the work, recognizing that there might be some sort of disconnect from what the executive leaders are envisioning to the people, the frontline workers. Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I'm so fortunate because my clients and work relationships and partners have all had a lot of great strategy. They're smart business people, and they're also smart enough to recognize that something just isn't maybe connecting in terms of culture. So one thing that's been really interesting is when I do culture assessments, I'm typically out there across all shifts, on the floor or on the job site, and I just talk to a lot of people. I think one of my superpowers is that I'm just a really good listener, and I get people comfortable enough to talk and to share with me what it's actually like. All of these discussions that I have are completely confidential. But Sydney Yoshida was a Japanese social scientist and psychologist and business consultant who really worked in the auto industry. He coined a term called the iceberg of ignorance. And if I could sort of draw a visual map for everybody that's dialing in right now, if you think about like the iceberg that took out the Titanic, we know that there is ice that we can see above the water, and then below, which is the danger zone, there is a whole lot more ice that's jagged and deep and really, really wide. So this iceberg of ignorance, what it represents is that about 4% of what's above the waterline is what executives see. So executives are aware of about 4% of the potential problems that can impact culture. Now, that's not saying they're bad executives. I mean, they're setting the vision, They're, setting goals, they're doing business planning. In a lot of cases, they might be asking somebody like an HR professional to implement a culture survey, an employee satisfaction survey. A lot of those are in place. But executives typically are aware in most organizations of about 4% of what's actually going on. So that's above the waterline. Now let's start creeping below the waterline. And below the waterline, middle managers see about 9% of the problems. So, that might be like your senior PMs, your project execs, although they might be at the executive level, but somewhere in that area where they're starting to manage multiple teams and multiple projects, they're seeing about twice as much as the top executives in most organizations, but they're not seeing it all. So then we go down now, here's where the big bulk of it comes. We keep going down this iceberg, right? And we know it keeps getting wider underneath the waterline. And so supervisors are seeing above 70%. We'll say about 74% of what's actually going on. Let's just stop and think about that for a minute. When we think about who actually sets culture on a job site, on a shift, in a manufacturing unit, the executives and middle managers, they may be putting a lot of the programs in place, procedures, process, training, all of that. But the supervisors are the ones that set a lot of that culture. And they're the ones that see about 74% of that. Now, if we go down from there, that's when we get to the workers. And the workers see and feel and experience everything. So 100%. And if it's a good culture, then they're knowing it and feeling it. And if it's not a good culture, that's 100% of what they're soaking in way down below the waterline, day after day after day. So when I go in to do something like a culture assessment, I do start at the top, like, okay, what do you have for your vision, your mission statement, your values, your goals? What are you measuring? Let's take a look at things like your employee survey. But then I spend a lot of time working down and spending the bulk of the time with the folks that are on that front line, that 100%, whether it's good or not good, and just listening to what their experience is like as they show up day after day to do the job. So that is part of what I do are these culture assessments, and then assimilating that feedback for the layers above to say, here's where your culture is working really strongly, and here are where the opportunities are. And I've worked with organizations that have tremendous culture all the way through. I've worked with organizations that have some variability, and I've worked with some organizations that, there's just a big disconnect between what the folks at the top see and what the people in the field or on the floor feel.
So one of the questions you just briefly talked about it was, who sets the culture of the company, right? So whether it be and I'm sure it varies, right? Whether it be a huge corporation or like a mom and pop place, so who determines the culture? Is it the workers? Is it the people in the middle? Is it the owner and CEO?
Yes, it's all of that. And your question is really, really insightful because there are microcultures that occur within that. So for example, when we think about folks on the front line, whether that's in the field, on the manufacturing floor, whatever the operation is, there's peer-to-peer interaction, right? And there's peer-to-supervisor interaction. And that microculture is something that in many ways drives more behavior than what we might be thinking when we put, for example, our employee handbook in place. So in terms of leaders, leaders absolutely are the start for setting culture. Let me give a prime example. If a leader is consistently pushing on teams for schedule or cost, then those teams are going to start to think that what they're going to be measured as being successful on is trying to find ways to shave time and money. And you and I both know and most of our listeners do, that might be a good thing. However, it can end up with quality defects on the job. It certainly can end up with safety, health and environmental issues. So a strong leader needs to understand how our communication may be received down at that front line. There's almost like an amplification level. So if you think about what a leader is saying in terms of the business plan, or you think about what a project exec or a middle manager might be saying about the owner and what the expectations are. And when we've got to have, certificates for occupancy and things like that. And then that starts to get down to the supervisor and foreman level. There's an amplification that occurs. So part of strong culture is to realize that those folks that are doing the work might be feeling that pressure. And if there's not a strong leadership message of, yes, that's all important, and your safety is important, the community safety is important, we got to make sure we're doing good quality and we're communicating openly, then that's where that cultural breakdown can start. So culture is a yes and all of what you've mentioned.
That's funny, right? Because I asked that because I worked for places where the people at the top are like, everything's rosy, everything's wonderful, this place is great, and you've got a job, and you've got some medical insurance. But the people, as it goes further and further down, are like,
Yeah.
yeah, but we're making $5 an hour less than the guy next to us, or we're working 6 days a week, or you don't pay overtime, or we don't get sick time, or and then you got Susie's coming in 3 hours late, and the boss doesn't dock her pay, or Freddie comes in, doesn't come in at all, or doesn't get in trouble, right? So there's like you said, kind of stews at the bottom. People are the peer to peer at the bottom, and amplifies, right?
Yeah.
Do you,
And go ahead. Sorry, I just had
no,
a thought.
go ahead. No, your point is better.
Well, it's just that you've just mentioned so many really important things to reflect on. So first of all, is that sort of, we have our, maybe we have a corporate website, maybe we've got an Instagram page, and we're putting out there, things like, oh, we had this company barbecue, and, we're doing the toy drive. And those are all really, really important things. At the same time, if there are those inconsistencies, particularly when we start to think about doing the work. So if we're pushing on, working 6/12s, 6/10s, whatever that might be, and we're asking people, maybe people are starting to raise their hand saying this doesn't feel like it's safe, or our tools are not adequate for the job,
Right.
or, we don't have the right guards for this equipment, or our trench boxes aren't sized correctly, or whatever it might be. And if that doesn't have any sort of feedback loop, then people stop talking. And in the deficit of talking, as well as hearing from their leaders, that's where these microcultures start to develop. So one of the challenges actually for a leadership team, for a strong leadership team, is first of all to be listening to what people are saying and what concerns they have. And it's not that teams expect every single concern to get addressed. Human psychology is more of, I want to know that you're listening to me, and then I want to know what you're doing across what everyone is saying. So, okay, I get it. Like, I'm not always going to get everything my way, but I'm glad you're listening to Tony. And, Tina's suggestions were really important. So I'm glad you're following up on those. So teams want to know that something's happening. But the other part is that when things don't go well, people want to know about it and want to know why. There's a lot of psychology around when a leadership team is only communicating the good news.
Right. Right.
So culturally speaking, teams know when stuff's not going right. They know when an owner is upset. They know when the city has denied a permit. They know when we lost the bid, right? They know all of that. And what they're looking for is not just the happy news of, hey, we won this work, or we brought this in, or we're having a company barbecue, or we raised this much money for the local hospital. They also want to know, hey, this is tough right now. This is a tough project. We had a tough loss. We're working hard with the owner and the city and the local community. So I guess what I'm saying is culturally, the people at the front line want to know that the leadership team is aware of how hard it is at times and is providing that feedback loop as well. So that was just great, and like a great segue you gave me.
Yep. I love it. Do you have an example from your experience where you've gone in and maybe a particular leadership or owner says things are great here, and then you uncover and discover that it's not as good as you think?
Yeah.
Can you, well, I mean, not naming names, of course, but can
Yeah,
you share that story?
I won't name names, but I was called in and asked to support a culture assessment for an operation. And the corporate information was wonderful. talking to the executives was fantastic. And when I got out on boots on ground, boots on floor, I'll just say boots on, the the common feeling among the front line was, and this is word for word, lie, lie, deny. And when I took that back in, the corporate team, they were stunned. They were kind of appalled. Now that's probably the most dramatic one.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, I've worked with organizations where they've they have been all the way through um, engaged, having hard conversations, feeling communicated with. Um, there was a plant manager I worked with out in the Mojave Desert, a manufacturing plant, where his first week when he took over the plant, most leaders doing something like that would be really looking at production, you know, the
Yeah.
money, where can we start to make improvements? Um, this gentleman, Stan, his main thing was to go around and meet every single worker
Oh,
on every shift and ask about their families. And when I walked around with him a couple months after he had taken over his role, it was phenomenal. I mean, he'd taken notes and he'd memorized them. And so he would walk up to a production operator and be like, hey, how's Chris doing?
right.
I know there was a big game. How'd Chris do? Like,
Yeah.
and so these people, they started to really resonate with that. Where I had worked for PJ Dick Trumbull Melindy Group, the chairman, Cliff Rao was just a phenomenal leader. And when I was consulting for them, I remember people telling me I would take a bullet for Cliff, I'd walk through fire for Cliff, I'd step in front of a moving car. And he had that same thing where he cared so much about his team and his people, and folks could feel that. And he wasn't afraid to go out where the work was being done and talk with people. And he would ask the questions of, what's the best part of doing this? And they'd say, okay, what's hard? What help do you need? So again, the way that leaders ask questions makes a difference. A lot of times a leader might go out and do a drive by and a swing through and they'll say, how's it going?
Right.
And most workers are going to say, it's good. It's fine. Yep, it's going good, on schedule, going to make our numbers, make the schedule. But a good leader is going to ask them more pointed question. Okay, like what's going well? And then, okay, what's tough right now? And what do you need from me? How can I help? And that little turn, but that needs to be all the way through,
Yeah.
not just when you have the chairman or plant manager going out.
And even here at the school, we try to do that where, for example, I just had one yesterday, we call it a round table, where I'll put all the
Yeah.
sheet metal teachers in a virtual room round table and listen, what can we do to be better? This is your chance to let me know what we can do to do better, whether it be, better communication. I got tons of notes, right? The curriculum questions or different policy procedures, and, they need tools. Let me write that down. I think they like that. I was kind of hoping I'd get more participation, I didn't get many people in the yesterday's roundtable. It was at 4:30 end of the day. It's a nice day out. People don't want to be stuck in a virtual thing, but I paid the people that were there. I got some great feedback for next year, which is great. We've already, in less than 24 hours implemented some of that change.
Mhm.
So I like that stuff. What about as far as uh, things leaders can do to maybe those leaders that come into a place that doesn't have a good culture? What are
Mhm.
some things that someone can do to change the culture, do you think?
Yeah. So a newer leader or somebody that is going in to see, where things are. So first of all, there's some real quick indicators, right? Okay. We have the obvious ones like, yeah, you can go ahead and pull your workplace survey and look at the numbers. You can look at things like your safety rates, your quality rates, stuff like that. But okay, a couple of key indicators that always tell me right away how things are going to be. Uh, this one's pretty simple, but when I drive up to a job site or into a manufacturing plant, particularly a chemical plant, one of the first things I look for is the way people have parked. So if people have backed in to head out, that right there tells me a lot about culture. So I was up at Sargent Construction up in Orono, Maine recently, and Herb Sargent is third generation owner. His grandpa started it. And I went up for a meeting, and it happened to coincide on the day they were having some all employee meetings. And without exception, and I commented on this to her, when I drove in, every single vehicle from the Toyota Corolla up to the, Denali,
Yep.
backed into head out. That tells me a lot right there. Like, okay, there's been communication. People are consistent around this. I walk in and everybody greeted me. Nobody was like just sort of, side eyeing or scaring away. When I get out to a job site or to a manufacturing plant, and it's like, when you turn the lights on and the roaches run from you,
That's right.
I
That's
know it's
right.
gross, right? And I am in no way implying that our frontline workers are
Right. I get
roaches,
it.
but when I'm out there and I'm walking around, particularly with, um, a leader, and people are actually like dispersing in front of me, that tells me a lot. So when people are afraid to talk, I think that's one of the main things. So a new leader, what can a new leader do? A new leader can really just either go out or schedule time to listen with words such as, I really want to know what it's like to do the work, what's good about it, what's hard about it, and what I can, do to try to help. Patrick Lencioni, who wrote The Ideal Team Player, he wrote Five Dysfunctions of a Team. He wrote a great book called The Ideal Team Player. And this, I would say, all listeners should read this book. It's short, it's fun, it's easy, and it's also takes place within a construction company. And the book focuses on three key traits: okay, humble, hungry, and smart. And not smart in terms of book smart or algebra smart or anything like that, but people smart. And when those three come together in an overlapping Venn diagram, that's when you have the ideal team player. And I would also venture to say that's when we have the ideal leader of a
Hmm.
team. So when I work with leadership teams, I ask them, okay, you've done your employee survey and you looked at the results, but how often have you gone out to where they're working
Right.
and watched them and have asked, like, all right, how's it going? Like, what's hard? What if I were brand new here and I was in your shoes? What would you be telling me is the worst part of this job? Like, how does work suck sometimes?
Right.
And that right there, and then again, the teams don't expect everything to be followed up on, but they do expect to know what has been done. And then to your point earlier, Mike, it's also with a new leader about being consistent. So we can't have pockets of exception and favoritism as well as retaliation and discipline. So
Right.
consistency. And that's, I would say for experienced leaders, that's really, really hard,
Yep.
is how we're going to be consistent. And then I think the final thing is, what's your communication loop? What's your cadence? What's your feedback? Are people curious? Are people operating in a vacuum of information? Because when a leader doesn't communicate about the good, the bad, and the ugly, people are going to make up their own story. It's the way that we are as humans.
Yep.
We're going to fill in the blanks, right, with our what we think is the information.
Yep. If you don't tell me, right, I'm left to assume, and then usually I assume bad stuff because you're not telling me, right?
Exactly.
What advice would you give the workers who want to change the culture of the company? Right? Is the advice, hey, listen, suck it up or else, or leave your job, or sometimes it happens to all of us, right? You love the job and you love the people and you love it, but the
Mhm.
culture just stinks, right? You can't,
Yeah.
what advice would you give someone?
Yeah, that is a really good point, because right now Gallup just released their latest workplace survey, and it's like 64% of workers are unhappy with the culture in their organization. So, in our last call, we talked about how people are jumping jobs.
Right.
And I told you, like, people don't like change. So there's something going on there. And before this call, I took a look at that latest workplace survey, and 64% say their culture is not good. So, I think that some workers, and this includes people that work in banking and medical, this is the military. This is not just certainly construction and manufacturing, but there
Right.
is a bit of a belief in the hierarchy, right? And if we think about, like, let's say somebody that's working on a job site going to their super or their foreman and trying to, escalate an issue, that can be tough because sometimes the foreman or the soup may be the issue.
Right.
But I think for workers to understand, like, is there a process? So many good companies now, whether in manufacturing or construction, have some sort of concern reporting tool, which can either be anonymous or um, you can have your name on it. And so particularly for things like safety concerns, those are things we should definitely be, watch out for your brother, your sister, your best friend, whatever that might be.
Yep.
I think though that there's been a lot of sort of inherited belief that you can't run things up the chain or up the flagpole that has come from our generation, right? And I think with this newer leadership generation coming in, which we talked about in our last call, um, folks are getting more open to this because I think that leaders are starting to understand the business case of losing people. So I would encourage workers to try to find the avenue for them to express their concerns, their wishes, their observations. And it probably exists more than I think some people might think.
Yeah.
That being said, it's not always easy because that immediate supervisor, foreman, soup, whoever it might be, project manager, may make it difficult.
Yep, I agree. Then because we're getting to the point now where we normally do the lightning round because we're not going to do the lightning round because
Wow,
we
that went
skipped
so
on.
fast today.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not going to talk. You did a great job lightning round this time. So this time, if you want to ask me
Yeah,
questions,
I do.
whether it be about culture, fine. No, I'm nervous. Man,
Okay. No,
perspiring.
no,
Perspiring.
don't get nervous. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you anything weird like your food fight food because we've covered that. But if you think about, Mike, your time in the Marines, like who, you don't have to mention the name, but that person, that officer that you worked with, okay, that you reported up to, that you would have taken the bullet, run through fire, stepped in front of a moving car, adjectives. What made that person so impactful in your life that right now, when you think about being, back then when you were, serving, what adjectives to describe them?
That's a fantastic question. Man, I'm put on the spot now. There's a lot, right? So even though I only served 4 years in the Marine Corps, I was an enlisted guy, and I served in Okinawa, Japan for a while. And my last duty station was in North Carolina, and I had two very high-ranking enlisted guys there that were, um, you know, patient comes to mind, right? Very patient,
Okay.
even though in, um, adjectives. That's a great one. You know, the one thing that the difference between the
Or
military
traits.
and
You can even go with traits. How's
yeah,
that?
military and civilian life, right? So military, everyone's got a rank, right? So everybody knows who they can report to. So I have a problem, I'm going to the next guy above me. That was always very helpful, whether it be, you know, in the office or in the field or even back at the barracks or anywhere, right? You knew someone was in charge and someone was responsible. So, you know, just be forgiving, patient, and these are some of these Marines I worked for were 20-year lifers, right? They've been in them. That's pretty much the only job they ever had was being in the Marine Corps. Some of these guys were former drill instructors, some of them are former recruiters, and they've been in the job for sometimes 20, 25 years. Patient, forgiving. What's another good trait those guys had? Understanding. They were very, when I worked for the training shops there as I was getting out, my son was very sick at one point, was in the hospital. They came to visit in the hospital, which was fantastic. One of my superiors, enlisted guy, Master Guns Casey, he sent me home to Boston because he knew that I was from Boston. That's where the best hospitals were for children. He said, "We got to get you home, take your boy home
Yeah.
for 30 days, go do what you got to do, get him better." Um, Caring, and they also felt like a responsibility that they were kind of setting that example, right? Because they knew how to
Yeah.
act, and they knew there was a time to joke with you, even though they outranked you by a lot. And then when it came down to getting stuff done, you had to get stuff done, right?
Mhm.
There was no, you can't talk to me that way. There was no who you to talk to me like that, or you hurt my feelings, or
Mhm.
they knew when the stuff had to get done, whether it be loading out to prepare to go someplace important, whether it be picking up something important somewhere else, bring it someplace else, or just a big job that had to get done in a short amount of time. We didn't normally work weekends, but if I had to get done on the weekends, there wasn't like, oh my God, I can't. You can't make me who. There was none of that. We just got
Yeah.
got it done, and
Got it done. Yeah.
yeah, that was it. That was.
Yeah.
I worked with some great, and there was great guys that chewed my butt sometimes too. They knew, if I screwed up, they held me accountable, right? And that was something else. So holding
Great
people
one.
accountable,
Accountability. Yep.
and
Yep.
that's,
That consistency, like we talked about, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's and again, I was a lot older. So some of the guys that were in charge of me were like my age. So they felt kind of strange because I had some of them coming to me saying, "Hey, how would you do this?" Yeah, Maloney. I'm like, I'm low ranking, I'm just a regular guy here. Sergeant, you're the guy, you're the sergeant. No, Maloney, how would you some of these kids were so young, they didn't know how to be a leader. So
Yeah.
my experience was stepping in, helping them, you know, I'm still a lot of friends. My best friend in Pennsylvania from the Marine Corps, I outranked him for a lot of the time we were in, but towards the end he outranked me. So I was calling him sergeant. Yes, sergeant, no sergeant. That's just there's that respect, a lot of respect there as well. You worked hard to get where you're going and what you're doing here. Um, the accountability piece is great because that's what makes people be better, right? Learn from your
Yeah.
mistakes. Hold,
And there's no mystery, right?
there's
I
no
know what I'm
mystery.
doing, and everybody, if I look left, look right, everybody else is getting held to the same level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, right? And that's how, again, all the Lance corporals were treated the same. And then, once you achieve the next rank up corporal,
Mm.
they all received certain
Interesting.
responsibilities and they were held accountable for that too. As a corporal, you're in charge of people, and that some would say, who do you belong to? Where's your corporal? Where's your Lance corporal? Or if you were out in town doing something stupid and, got arrested for something stupid, they would say, "Hey, Maloney, why aren't you keeping an eye on Brenner?" I don't. I was out. Doesn't matter. Keep an eye on your guy. Or if 30 Marines went to the bar and there was a bar fight, or something bad went down, they found out who was the senior person there, and that person usually got in trouble. Like
Yeah.
you with 30 Marines, staff sergeant, you let all these 30 people get in trouble. What were you doing? And that, same with the officers. Same thing. I had a lot of great officers to this day. Same thing, officers. I was very lucky to be from Boston, so
Hmm.
you bump into a lot of Boston sports fans out there, right? You bump into a lot of Yankee fans, a lot of sports fans. So
Steelers
if I would,
fans.
if I was lucky enough to be, if I was lucky enough to be with an officer that was a Red Sox fan, I was in.
Yeah.
If I was unlucky enough to be with a Yankees fan, it was usually a miserable time for Mike because I would always talk trash about the Red Sox and they would always talk trash about the Yankees. So,
Yeah.
that's my story. It's
Yeah. Those are good, but I think you've named a couple of things that we've talked about, and again, that leader can make that culture. So you can be miserable when you're out with your team, or you can feel like I accept the mission. I feel like I matter. I know what I'm getting measured to. I know if I have a problem, I can raise it. And I think as a capstone statement,
it,
that's
it,
what culture is. It's not the website. It's not,
yep.
you know, the
it,
fact
it
we had a company barbecue. That's the stuff.
and there were guys in the Marine Corps that maybe you didn't like very much, right? But if you went out in town or you went to the bar, there was something going down, you had that guy's back no matter what, right? I might not like that sergeant in the office because I think he was a jerk to me. But if he was at the bar and something went down, he'd ride home or
Hmm.
someone tried to beat him up or something like that. Someone just yell, "Let's go!" and didn't
Hmm.
matter. Everyone was on the same team. It was great. It's
Yeah.
they say about Semper, Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis, right? Always faithful.
Yeah.
And that rolls true 20 years later, even being outside. So think of the culture the Marine Corps is set, right? Look at that culture, right? You got your brainwashed into Semper Fidelis. That's what they say. And that's what, it happens even now. If I need something from somebody or somebody in some Marine Corps group I belong to, I need some help with something, they'll send somebody up. I had back window of my father-in-law's car was broken. I reached out to some Marine friends of mine. Some guy said, "Give me your address. I'll be there tomorrow morning."
Hmm.
It's a couple. It'd normally be $1,000. I'll charge you 200. Just give me the pay for my parts. I'll take care of the labor. It's like, geez, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I believe a lot of our crews feel that way, in our industry, but it's
Yeah.
that leadership piece that I think the industry deserves to have is the development. This goes back to our conversation last time, is that ability to develop leaders that are going to inspire and serve in that model. So that was a great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike, for answering
Awesome. Yeah.
my lightning round question.
That was great. I never actually had to put those words into put that together before. And again, inspiring, right? A lot of these guys Marine Corps for 20 something years. I don't know how they did it. I did my 4 and was done. I don't know how these guys do 20 to 25 years and deal with that every single day, every single year for 20 something years. I was 4 years. I was out.
Well, you knew that all this was waiting for you, the chance to
Yes,
talk,
that's
right?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife is it didn't happen for reason. But this is Lisa Nakamura. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on. We
Yeah.
talked about culture. Appreciate you very much. And we'll have you on again soon.
All right.